Do we still have, since we're talking about this after the call audience, do we have?
Sample. It's not like obviously specific to.
We have a young lady in our office.
I'm going to call this work session to order.
So I have copies of it.
Ms. Bowie, will you please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Melissa Mason,
Here.
Josie Barnhart,
Here.
Pat Bradford,
I am here.
Judy Justice, Dr. Tim Merrick,
Here?
David Perry,
Here.
and Pete Wildebohr.
I am present.
Thank you. All right, if we could all stand for the pledge. Dr. Merrick, could you lead that for us, please? Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Second. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 6-0. We're going to start off with, these are all items, well, 2 of the 3 items are things that were sent forward for us to discuss from a previous meeting. And so just kind of bringing some more conversation in regards to call to audience. There had been several different components to it, but I kind of wanted us to be able to just kind of discuss our thoughts on the grouping situation, if there are multiple speakers in one grouping, and speak to the movement of the call to audience to the end. So if we want to start with the grouping, and then we can move to the moving it to the end. Does anybody have any commentary on the grouping of like speakers? So if it's a group of speakers from, yes, you there you are. Okay. Does anybody want to speak to that, for that, against that? If not, we can just move on to the, Mr. Perry.
I just wanted to, I know that sometimes, you know, one group can dominate the call to audience selection. So one of my alternate ideas was to, for when members of the community sign up, that we could give a preference to anybody who hasn't spoken in the last couple of meetings and put them on the front of the list, and then anybody who has spoken in the last 2 months, they could be on a secondary list, assuming there's still space left, and the lottery could go from there. I don't know what other people thought about that.
Ms. Bradford?
Can we find out how that would work? I mean, semantically, is that even possible?
I mean, I got this one, Anita, and you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Logistically, that's possible. What we would then have to do is spend the time combing through the last several meetings to see if someone's name is a repeat. So I think that, I mean, we do a lottery now, so if we have over 25, a lottery fairly picks them so that nobody gets chosen above or the other. I think we certainly can do that. It would take extra amount of just logistical work for us to do.
I guess my question would be, over the past, let's say, 5 months, have we had more than the people to fit into the lottery where it would be an issue?
That one I will ask an immediate answer.
We've only needed the lottery the last couple of months, and only 4 or 5 people at most did need the lottery. So we initially allowed 20 people to sign up, and then they decided that we would allow another 5. So even though those 5 didn't get in on the lottery, they still have the opportunity to come in and
Right.
So over the last year, how many times have we popped over the 20?
Just the last, just
Okay.
the last couple months. Mr. Wildebohr?
A couple things that come to mind. One is we already have that, that we say that we're going to ask them to do that, but it's, it's an honor thing at that point. If you have a group of 12 people, then, hopefully instead of having 12 spots, you share that. The other thing I keep going back to, and it's something that we don't need to discuss now for time, but is the fact that, at one point we had a sign up at the door. We continue to have slots where somebody signs up, I'm going to be there that day. I think we had 3 or 4 last time that don't show up. So I would almost be at a point where, I'm not saying we have to do it all in person, but why don't we have maybe 50-50, If we have 25 spots, say 13 of them be online, 12 of them be here, because then you have people that actually show up instead of have, we have somebody else may have wanted a spot, not always, but somebody may have wanted that spot, but they don't get that spot because somebody beat them to in the random drawing, but still, they don't show up sometimes. So, we want to hear from folks. We can't hear from them if they don't show up.
Dr. Merrick?
Well, David and I met the very first time when we signed up at 4 o'clock. And I know that a lot of us here, before we were board members, did show up to speak. To ask 12 people or 15 people to show up an hour early is asking a lot out of our public. I do agree we had like 3 people, which is really unusual. And it's typically, I say, around 1 person that doesn't show up. I don't think that warrants change, but that's just, one opinion. I want to just also remind of the history, and who am I to talk about history? I'm the newest person around, but I do know that there used to be, I think, 30 slots, right? And it just seems to be there's a constant whittling down, and I want to just bring it back to the board's attention that I don't think we want to, keep our public from being able to speak with us, and so I would hate to cut it down or make it more restrictive than it already is.
Ms. Barker?
Thank you, Ms. Winston. When we were looking over the call to audience, previously, the policy states about an hour of public comment. And so the definition of slots came from that, of making sure that we're being in alignment with our policy versus more lackadaisical. So I did want to speak to that for a moment. I do like the idea of being able to hear from different voices. I also agree with my colleagues. I do like the idea of the lottery online because it allows for people to not have to show up an hour or 2 before our meeting just to see an opportunity to speak. Kind of gives that clarity and helps us prepare as well. I think as board members we get to see what the talking points are going to be about and who's signed up for what's on the mind of public discussion. So I like the idea from my colleague to the right of if there's a way to kind of give an opportunity for different speakers, that's wonderful, but I also understand that if we just keep it as a lottery, I think it's fair.
Ms. Justice? And
Oh, yeah, I've been through this whole thing. I started, there was nobody. We had maybe 2 or 3 people who would show up and say something. And then sadly, the sexual assault situation came to light and suddenly we were packed every night. Then COVID happened and we were packed constantly. But it seems like it has reached an equilibrium where it's working. And I really don't see any reason at this point to change it. That's my point of view from having seen all kinds of different permutations, all kinds of different reasons people wanted to speak. Everybody at this table was at that call to the audience. I think except you. But everybody up here that's on the board now, that's where I originally saw them. No, that wasn't an insult. You know what I mean. So, it's an important part of what we do. In fact, we used to let them speak for 3 minutes, but it became so popular that we had to cut it down to 2. I like the 3 minutes, but then it stayed within the hour, so. But as it is now, it seems to be working.
And I know that when we do have a lower number, we have bumped it up to the 3 minutes before. So, Ms. Bradford and Mr. Perry.
I think this is probably my concern, and I don't want to whittle it down. I want to increase it. I want to allow more new people to come and talk. And I have seen people passing out prepared speeches to other people to say, and I'm just trying to get a more variety of voices instead of the same voice every single meeting for 40% or more of our called audience. I have heard and still am hearing from people who don't like the intimidation that goes on in the audience. Last meeting was really bad. It keeps people from coming when the people in the audience are speaking out against a speaker or against a board member. It's just totally unacceptable. And there's an intimidation factor about this call to audience that I'd like to see change. And that was my idea in, if we group some people that always come with the same topic and there's 10 of them and we've only got 20 slots, or there's 8 of them and we've only got 20 slots. And if no one else signs up, but it would take a while to change that. There'd be a curve. People would have to feel like it's a welcoming environment and they feel physically safe in this room. And I know there's some people who didn't feel physically safe last meeting. And we don't need to go back to that. It was that way when I wasn't on the board. You were afraid when you were in this room. So I want to open up to more people to hear from voices that we don't hear from. And that's not adding more time. It's 1 hour. It's way more than anyone else does. We are more generous than any other governmental body in the region. Don't see any reason to I mean, if we've got a 4-hour meter, we're giving 25% of our meeting to call the audience. I think that's more than adequate. But I just want to consider if there's another way to do that group thing.
Mr. Perry?
And just besides my other idea, there have been some cases, and like we mentioned, maybe 3 or 4 from our last meeting where they didn't show up. But often we haven't gone the whole hour. And there may have been, if we just keep the list open, at least either online or the other list that we have at the door, and we still have time, we should let the next people on the list speak if they are here.
Do we still do alternates? We used to.
Yes, we still do alternates.
Maybe that's what.
Ms. Justice?
Yeah, we used to also see, people would cede time, which sometimes would clean up the concern she has about everybody scattered talking about one subject. I thought that was extremely fair because from week to week, things change in this town, little city. And it also gave us more of a chance to hear from week to week what was important to the audience. And I'm sorry, Ms. Bradford, that you feel that people feel scared and intimidated. But, I mean, I sat up on that board when I knew there were people with firearms in this audience staring at me and calling me names. Luckily, then they started bringing the sheriffs. After that went on for a while. So I know, but this is part of public life. And we do have to protect ourselves. And I'm sorry if people out there in the audience feel that way. But these people are passionate about, I may not be, but they have something they're passionate about. We didn't try to restrict people during COVID, and believe me, that went on for almost 2 years. So, this is our job to listen to people. And if people in the audience, that's going to vary from person to person about how much, I guess you could say, they perceive danger or lack of. I can also say in the 6 years or more that I've been up here, or up there, in one form or another, people have been basically pretty darn, even though it gets scary, pretty darn respectful. We haven't had problems. We've had to remove a couple people. We had those wonderful Proud Boys, which were being cheered on by people in the audience. That was, by the way, a joke. I didn't think they were that wonderful. But we allowed that, and it got out of hand at one point, but that, I don't even know if that was them so much as the person running the meeting. So, you know, this is part of what we do. We are here for the public, and we are making decisions for the public. So they're going to be part of what we do. There's no way around it.
Before I go to other board members, to our attorneys, as far as seating time, I remember that has come up in the past. Is that, and I'm looking at policy, but I'm not seeing anything on it. Do you have any thoughts, recommendations, legality to, or whatever, as it pertains, not legality, as it pertains to policy?
Are you talking about one speaker saying, hey, I'm...
Seating time to another, yes.
I think you can say no to that. And here's the reason why. You haven't denied any person their equal opportunity to speak by doing that. In fact, what you're doing is preventing someone from going over. Otherwise, you think, if you give everybody 3 minutes and 11 people sign up, right? And 10 of them, one person wants to drone on for 33 minutes, they'd be able to do that, and it would have the effect of stopping everyone else from getting an opportunity to speak. You know, and it treats people unequally, and I don't believe that's a problem. And I think, you know, we talked, the statute does allow you to group together people. I'm not saying it might or might not be a good policy. Whether it is or not is up to you. But you do have that option under the statute, just like we have in our existing policy of having people who are all there to talk about the same topic, asking them to designate a spokesperson.
And if I might just, to complete that thought, looking at policy 2310, it says if an unusually large number of people request to speak, a majority of the board may decide to request the designation of a spokesperson for each group of persons supporting or opposing the same position. So we do have that capability. I do understand what Ms. Radford is saying as well, but we do have the capability to do that.
These are all the online registrants for the last year, so I just emailed that to all of you.
Okay.
I just emailed you folks a list of how many registrants registered online for the last year.
Dr. Merrick? Barnhart, and then
So to me first respond to what Barbara is saying is that, yeah, I can see where, you know, we don't want one person to sit up here and talk for half an hour, but, you know, we could easily say that you can cede your time for one person, you know, each person. 2 minutes goes by really fast. We've all done it. We've all gotten up there and we had a lot that we wanted to say. We had to try to make it fast so we could get it all in. And sometimes the public wants to be able to get into a little bit more nuanced, you know, messaging. And so if one person was seated and they got double the time so they could speak a little bit more thoroughly, I think we want to encourage the public to interact with us. We don't want to say, hey, how can we keep them from doing this? And as far as the intimidation goes, it comes from us as well. We can't intimidate the public. And, you know, we do have sheriffs here, and if we don't, and why do we have that? So I do think we've got that under control. If we need to instruct them more or make more specific requests of them, I think we can do that. I haven't seen the intimidation. I'm sorry that I missed it, because I would speak to it if I saw it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate, I think that as we are conducting business, that making sure that we maintain order, and it's the job of our chairperson to do that, is important, as well as, yeah, I don't want to see anybody in the audience be intimidated or threatened or anything like that. And so that would violate our standards of expectation as being part of the public body at the meeting. I think we start splitting hairs if we start allowing certain seed times and not seeding times, because call to audience, we do not have the capability to speak back to our individuals. It's not a dialogue, unfortunately. And when you're able to sit down with people and have the back and forth dialogue, you get better results as far as where you want to come to. So I just want to point that out. If we're going to start allowing potential seed time or not seed time, then how much is too much or how much is too little to do that, and potentially preferential treatment to some people getting extra time and other. I don't like that idea, but I agree that we need to communicate with our public. However, I do think that having open dialogue and conversation is a better way to do that, because we're able to engage back and forth rather than just sit and listen. But that's where.
Mr. Wildebohr?
Well, and I've seen, the attempt at seating time out here. I was not the chair at the time, but it was a mess. It did not work well. I'm going to seat you, and so then, well, I'm seating you and you, and then it became just, so it was more of a headache to try to keep up with who seated whom and how much time did you have. And honestly, at the end of the day, less people were able to speak because we ended up spending time, the chair at that time ended up spending time trying to figure out who had ceded to who and whom. We had people calling in and saying, well, I'm not actually there, but I'm going to cede my time to so-and-so. And then somebody would get a phone call, and so well, so-and-so says he wants to cede to so-and-so. I think we need to go back to, who's here, and, whether we do 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but I think once we start trying to say, well, I'm going to share my time to you, but I only have 30 seconds left, so that, my 30 seconds add to some, poor Ms. Bowie's over here trying to juggle all the times. I think 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I think we need to be very clear that, if we have less than 20 folks, but if we end up spending 3 or 4 minutes out of our 60 minutes trying to figure out seed time, I think that becomes, exactly what we don't want to do. We want to hear from our folks. So I think, as Ms. Justice said, I think maybe leaving it as it is the best idea at this time.
Ms. Bradford?
Is there any appetite besides me that wants to maybe consider going back to the alternates? Because that seemed to work. If people didn't show up, there was a list of people who may or may not be here, but they knew that they could be an alternate, and that would bring them into the meeting. I don't know why we stopped doing it. Maybe the people aren't signing up out there. But I know if I go down to the county commission meeting, I can sign up on the spot. But then they don't have hardly anybody that comes to speak. So is there any appetite besides me that would consider the alternate? That way we have more options and we don't, and we're doing a good job of allowing them to come in late and still get their spot. That's not being abused as far as I can tell, but I just want more people to have the opportunity.
Real quick, Ms. Bowie, do we recall why we took those alternates off?
I believe it's because we put a 30-second sign up at the door. Because we replaced the individual chair, just allow us to have people to sign, and then we extended it for a unlimited number of folks to sign up. So the first time around, 4 or 5 people, 7 people, 10 people, because we as signed up out there. So we always, for policy, I believe, we would always allow the first 5 to speak. And then anyone after that 5 that's not permitted, they would be about to speak.
Ms. Justice, and we know Dr. Barnes who wants to talk to you.
Okay, you guys really reminded me of why we did basically stop having seating time, especially when they started talking about extending it, and people, yeah. So, yeah, it did turn into a big mess. At first, it was good. That's what I guess I have fond memories of the times, when people were polite and weren't dominating, and they literally started playing games with it, though, you're right. So, yeah, that is not, yeah, I have the fond memories of the time it worked. It doesn't. Unfortunately, things change.
Yes. Dr. Barnes?
A lot of you folks have mentioned about the complexity of call to audience, how restrictive it is to be able to have a dialogue with the people. I want to remind everyone that that is not the only way for the public to address or access the board. So I wonder if you wouldn't want to, in your little spiel in the beginning, remind everyone of the board member email address. Now that I have a work phone number and my cell number are my email are published as well. We want to encourage as much feedback as possible, not only at 2 minutes at a certain time during the month. So I would think that the more we can offer opportunities to say, hey, we can dialogue with this. We actually obviously track everyone's email who signs up for call audience. We can provide you that list as board members, and you can email those people individually if you so choose. We added a place where people could put more of a lengthier comment into their submission. But I do think that we need to remind everybody this isn't the only way to access this either.
Ms. Bradford?
I would move that we go back to allowing the alternates, whether we do it like it used to be done online, saying, well, you didn't get picked, but you're listed as an alternate, so show up and possibly, or stay with the obviously the extra number out at the door is not seeming to work, maybe because they don't know.
Do you have a specific number or just free floating?
Yeah,
Okay, so
No, just-
there's a motion to add back in alternates, and we have a second. Is there any discussion on that? Dr. Merrick?
For clarity, I like the idea. I'm thinking maybe if we still want to allow people to come and sign up at the door, the alternates would, like we have 20 that we allow, the 21st person would become the 26th person because we have to make room for those 5 at the door. That's just a thought.
Ms. Barnhart?
Thank you. Just for discussion purposes, I think that it needs to be a clear section as far as the time allotment. It stands, if everybody's here at 25 with transition time, it takes up that hour. So just how the notation needs to be done. I don't care however it looks, if it's highlighted or just say clearly alternate sign up of first come, first serve, or if it's online, like Ms. Bradford had spoken to, that's fine. I want there to make sure a clear delineation, because if we say 26 and then time is up at 25, that individual does not need to be upset that. So I just want to make sure, however we denote it, I'm in favor of this. I just want to make sure that this is, you're not guaranteed a spot. You are given a spot if the hour permits.
Mr. Wilbur?
Well, and I would agree with my colleague way around the table there. I think that I would rather see it be in person, because again, you might be an alternate, then you say, well, but I'm an alternate, so I'm not going to even show up because I probably won't be able to speak. I'd rather have somebody that's actually here be it. But I think the other thing we need to, if we're going to do something like that, again, which I think is a good idea, we need to delineate that, are we going to say, okay, we called your name, you're not here, then we're going to go to an alternate, or are we going to give them 2 or 3 opportunities to speak, so you were one of the top 20, we called your name twice, you were not here, then, so we went to an alternate, then you show up, what are we going to do in that scenario? So I think, I would say, if your name's called, you're not here, then we go to the alternate, and you had an opportunity, you weren't here, I'm sorry, but that'd be my recommendation.
Ms. Bradford?
And I would amend to go to 20 plus 5 for the door, plus 5 online.
Okay.
Plus what Pete just said.
Okay. So any further discussion on, wait, that was an amendment?
No, just, because you hadn't repeated it, so I can amend my own motion coming up.
Robert's rule.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion to add the +5 and +5 alternates.
But not, I don't think you
For
should
the
be
sign-ups.
notified, oh, you're number 26. You're listed as an
Right.
alternate, show up. you're
Right.
good.
But that's on the door, right?
Correct,
20
that's on the
people.
door. Okay, so
20 in, 5 out, 5 in.
the motion on the table is to add back 5 alternates to the sign-up list in person. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 7-0. So moving on to the next part of call to audience, there was discussion at the meeting to move call to audience to the end of the agenda. So I am going to open up the floor to anybody who wants to speak for or against that. Ms. Justice.
Not a good idea, not fair to the constituents. I know that we have more of a set time situation now. There have been people discussing about dinner, people go home and eat dinner. People can actually come here first and then go home and eat dinner. I'm just trying to, since 2018, we used to have it after, later in the meeting, what we're discussing now, possibly changing it to. And what would happen was, something would go on, and so the meeting would start stretching out, and people would be waiting and waiting and waiting. And so by the end of the evening, a lot of them would leave. And not only that, I was on a board that actually did that intentionally because they did not want to listen to the people, especially when the sexual assault situation came to light. And they intentionally, actually it had been at the beginning of the meeting, they actually moved it to the end to try to keep people from coming and talking. So it's working out well the way it is now. And having done it both ways, I see no reason why to change something if it's working.
Our attorneys would like to speak.
This is not legal advice, I just wanted to provide you, maybe the question about before or after. One of the towns that I worked for moved theirs, and they had moved it to the front, and ended up moving it back to the back again because people complained, hey, and it was just the concern that somebody raised a minute ago, that stuff happens during the meeting that we'd like to get a chance to comment on. And you know, for that reason, we wanted it at the back. But there is that other concern that you've got that Ms. Justice just raised, that, you know, our meetings are running long. That is a little bit of an inconvenience to people. So I think that was the other alternative reason. And I will tell you that town, Navassa, has very short meetings, unlike us. So.
Ms. Bradford?
I still would like, I can remember sitting here in my chair with 20 feet on either side of me, waiting till 11 o'clock to speak. I can remember when call the audience was at the end. And I just went around it, you know. And I just would like to try it, because I think it possibly could turn out more people. It might not work, but I just would like to see it tried. I would definitely want it to be before the closed session, and we are doing a darn good job, which I will remind people came out of the committee, to stick to the 4 hours, the time slot. And we're doing a darn good job of that. We really are. And so it's pretty predictable now when call the audience is going to be, and it didn't used to be at all, even when it was up in the beginning. But you can pretty much predict, and so you can predict what time we're going to get out of here, unless there's some kind of, you know, crisis. So anyway, I'm in the mood to try it. If I'm in a minority, I'm fine, but I am in the mood to try it.
Mr. Wilford?
One thing I would like to say, again, my own personal opinion, not everybody else's, but I think Ms. Justice was on the board when I was on the board at this point, where we had it, some of it at the beginning, some of it at the end. Worst idea in the world.
Totally agree.
All that does is that forces people, well, I'm really going to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about this, but I'm really going to talk about this so I can get in that first slot. So please do not, whatever we end up with tonight, please do not do that.
Do not split. Dr. Merrick?
Just a counterpoint to what our attorney was saying. There's absolutely a benefit to be able to say, I've listened to the whole board meeting and now I want to comment on it. But my concern is that we are supposed to be listening to our public. We're supposed to be taking what they say and mull it over and reason it and ask, you know, oh, I hadn't looked at it that way. And a lot of the stuff we talk about in the meeting, we vote on. And so if we move the call to audience till the end, we've already voted on it, and they're like, well, there's nothing to say now, you know. I was hoping that you'd listen to me, because I was really hoping that you'd hear that the public cares enough to sway your vote. So I think we owe it to them to hear them before we vote. That's my opinion.
Mr. Perry?
Not always the case, but in this case, I concur with Dr. Merrick. I think we need to listen to our people before we vote. I mean, could I see, I thought of your idea that you think it's a disaster, and we've proven it's a disaster, so let's not do it. I mean, you could say, anything that's not on the agenda, talk about later, but if it's on the agenda, talk about it beforehand. But, you know, it's probably going to end up being a logistical nightmare, so I would just stay with what we got. And some
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this dialogue from many of my colleagues. A couple things. I definitely agree that call to audience needs to be before closed session, I think. But when we're looking at the business of the board, I think that we could be more productive working together with the call to audience at the end. Again, before closed session, so this is not, I'm not saying that the meeting, but I go back and forth with this personally. What was brought up earlier was that there are multiple ways to communicate with us as board members. So a 2-minute speech of saying persuasion, there's so many other people that will talk, prior to making, at least I do, prior to making decisions. We have our staff, we have our admin, we have other people in the community that we're constantly getting input from, emails that we've heard from, phone calls. There's a lot that goes on prior to decisions being made. And so I don't know how much sway is too much, and that with looking at the concepts of call to audience, many times it's not even dealing with the agenda items. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody is absolutely entitled and welcome to share their opinion about anything that is going on in the school system. But as far as the effectiveness of us working together for the business of the board, I do think that there would be some merit for us to come in, work together to do the business of the board, which is what we're here to do, and then continue to listen, in addition to the other things that we're doing. I know many of us, myself included, go to schools. We visit with people. We get to go to the performances. We go to these things and engage in our community in multiple ways. We were at a breakfast just the other week. So it's not the only thing that we hear from the public, and like I said, I could go either direction. If it does get moved, absolutely needs to be before the closed session. But looking how other governing bodies operate, the call to audience, the public comment is at the end of the meeting. So I think there's something to be said for that. We have streamlined efficiency. We have streamlined the effectiveness of us coming together as the body of the board. I want to continue in that direction. And so I'm not really torn too much in either direction, but I don't think it's a bad idea.
And I haven't had a chance to speak, so I'm gonna say my piece. I am definitely hearing, that there are definite benefits and negatives, but my continual push is to keep it where it is, for some of the same reasons that some of my colleagues have mentioned, and that is to make sure that people know that we're listening, that they're giving their feedback. Yes, we do have the opportunity to communicate with various individuals within the district, and outside, like parents and the like, because we do get emails. We do have these various events for sure, but keeping in mind that not everyone is able to come to those events and speak to us. And yes, they could email, but maybe they weren't face-to-face. So I would lean toward leaving it as is myself. Ms. Justice?
Yes, this discussion has brought up something, the point of view that the public is communicating with us and wants to hear certain things, and they give us feedback, and then we come to meetings. I've had feedback about the call to the audience from the public. They like it the way it is, and they are afraid that it will be moved back. In fact, Ms. Barnhart just reminded me of the fact that I've had more than one. I probably had half a dozen people say, we like it the way it is. And it makes them feel like they've got more of a input to what our final decisions will be when they come up before. And yeah, there's going to be all kinds of, and that's the whole point, all kinds of a variety of things. A lot of them don't even have to do with topics we're talking about that night. But from the people out there coming up to me now, knowing that we were going to talk about this during this meeting today, they have repeatedly said they like it the way it is. In fact, it took a lot to get there, because Pete knows this. We went through all kinds of different ways of doing it. Yeah.
Any other commentary? All right, let's continue on with the New Hanover County Schools Employee Performance Bonus Plan Committee. It's a mouthful. Mr. Perry, this was something that you brought forward, and I think that we wanted to talk about this, ask any and all questions that we had about it. So I'm going to I'll direct, but I don't know if there's anything you would like to say or add about your committee plan.
Yes, so I believe this was the second version that, the initial version I sent to you about the second week of December, which has been revised a little bit since then, but it's pretty much remained the same for the last couple of months. Everybody kind of knows what it's for and what it's about, but just to stress, this is a committee, and its job is to develop a plan, and a plan that this entire board will have to approve. So we don't make any decisions, we make recommendations. So I think it's an important thing that there's a lot of reasons to say this will never happen, but it will definitely not happen if we don't go through this process. And I think it would be a worthy goal to attain, and I'd like to see that we can get started on this thing, because our employees are the lifeblood of the school system, and what makes it go. And if you got any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Mr. Wildebohr?
Well, Mr. Barrett, I'd like to thank you for bringing it forward. It's a great idea. I do have some reservations. My reservations are the same ones that I've had. Recommended committee staff is great, but I think it ends well before it needs to. I think we need to have some of the folks with their feet on the ground, as it were, boots on the ground. As I had recommended before, I think we need to have teachers, teacher assistants, bus drivers, principals, those kind of people. And, we have several of those we could bring forth, Teacher of the Year. What a perfect example. That would be a great person to have as a permanent member of this committee. I do see under C it says we're going to bring people in, we'll talk to them a little bit, we'll send them back out. I mean, I think that needs to be part of the ongoing committee, because they're the people that are in there. And the other thing is, I think that this might be a really great committee. I totally believe that anything we can do to help, bring forth more monies for all our staff, I think is exceptional. But I do think that we need to maybe put it underneath the, under the wings or the umbrella of the finance committee, so that, since it is finance, we're talking about money for the staff, and I think that might be a good place to, to have it. And then, basically it would just give us another place for it to go. Is basically the finance committee, we could review it and then bring it to the full board as an idea. Just a thought on that, but I think that might be good. Or HR, because HR, obviously, we're talking about some kind of a, way to measure different people, because that's one of the biggest. I think that'd be, and way ahead of myself on this one, or yourself on this one. But obviously, we have to measure a bus driver versus a teacher versus administrator. That's going to be a problematic thing to do. Be able to say, well, this kind of money, you need to go this way. And then, of course, we have to find the money, which is a huge concern. But I really would like to see it, at least the recommended committee staff to be expanded, to have, like I say, some of those key folks, teachers, teacher assistants and stuff, since we're talking about them as well as all these other folks.
I just want to, and thank you, I just wanted to refer you to section B-5, other staff. So I'm definitely encouraged. I don't know who all those people should be, so I was kind of hoping that we could get together kind of for a initial kind of organizational meeting, and we could discuss like who would be great. So
Okay, thanks, sir.
I just don't know who all those people are. As far as being under finance, I think it needs to be an independent committee, ad hoc committee, because it definitely has a financial component, but a lot of the, like you mentioned, a lot of the bulk of the work has to do with evaluating the performance. So it doesn't neatly fit into finance. So I think it's multidisciplinary. So.
Dr. Merritt?
I like the idea, if for no other reason, is to have our educators and staff understand that we care, and we're trying to find a way to support them and tell them that we care, that their work is invaluable. I do know this is a big task. This is not an easy thing. I mean, how we even determine the metrics is difficult. Like you said, not only because there's different types of staff and different jobs, but even one educator to the next. If we're talking about a Title I school versus, a different type of school, we can't just use a grading system, because that wouldn't be fair. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And is a board that really wants to work. We talked about it, Pat brought it up last time, about how many committees we're on. We work hard, we care. So I'm supportive of it. The devil's in the details. Finding the funding, that's even more difficult, but I really appreciate the fact that you want to do this, and I'm for it for that reason. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I wonder if Ms. Varnum would want to weigh in on how you see this working with different teachers, and maybe not the right person here, but.
Probably not, but I'm happy to add in. I think there's a lot to unpack, and I agree, a committee of well-rounded staff members would be very appropriate. But I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything in.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Ms. Justice?
I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I've been doing this over 30 years. And I'm within the school itself, within the classroom, within the hallways, within the cafeteria, on those buses. This isn't a competition. And we have so many excellent people. To actually be fair would be impossible because we have so many wonderful people. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy, and we don't have money anyway. In theory, it might feel good to people that haven't been embedded in the schools on the level, day in and day out, down on the ground. We collaborate. That is what's so wonderful about teaching. That is the best outcomes you can possibly get, is when you're together like this. And to try to judge one person's way of collaborating over another, and the different kids that we get and how you measure growth, the state can't even do it. They pull their hair out trying to figure out how to do it. I think, was it this year? They pulled back, I think, in fact. I'm trying to remember, because they realized that. So, I mean, in theory, to some people, that might feel good. We're rewarding our best teachers, but we have so many good teachers. It's sort of like trying to pick your favorite child, and I'm not going to do that. So you're going to see where I'm coming from. It's a good thought from somebody out there that's been in the business world. Education is not the business world. It's a far cry from it. I've done both. And I love the fact that we do work collaboratively, and I don't think that this is going to necessarily be as good an idea as you think it would be when you get down to the nitty-gritty about what really goes on in our schools. And the many, many teachers that aren't given the kudos they deserve because they're too busy working and doing their jobs and supporting each other.
Mr. Perry?
Quickly, yeah, I just want to respond. I think that is why we need this committee, because in order to determine performance fairly, there's going to be a lot of work to it, because, you know, the accusation is, you know, oh, it's not going to be a fair process. It's going to, you know, the teacher with a lot of the learning disabled kids is going to have not going to get the bonuses, while the teacher with the A students are always going to get them. It shouldn't work like that. It should be based off student growth and things like that. And we have to determine those metrics. So I am with you on that we can't go that route. And that's why it does take a lot of, we need our employees buy in on this if we're going to do this. And we need them to make this their own. And I think we should hear from them. And I think it will, and I also think that, and this by no means should this be a replacement. You know, I've been quite clear in my proposal. This is not a replacement for, you know, increasing their wages, their base wages, nor should it be taken as a chunk out of it. This is over and above and beyond something that we can offer our employees that no other school district in this state can do, which will give us a competitive advantage in recruiting and developing and retaining the highest quality staff.
And Dr. Barnes, if you could, did you want to say anything, Ms. Bernhardt?
I just have one question. I know we're coming up on time. I apologize, but I hear the discussion, and I love the discussion. Has there been buy-in for the financial component with our county? I don't know if that's appropriate, Madam Chair, to ask that question, but that's my hesitation to this whole thing, is if we don't have the financial support of our county to do this, then I don't.
Okay. And I mean, if I might, if I remember correctly, this is not an immediate, we're doing this now. This would be a discussion, and I think then there could be that conversation with commissioners. I don't think that this is the plan for this year's budget at all, because that would be foolish to do at this point in time. But I think that this is for the future as far as that goes. So the conversation could be had at some point. Dr. Barnes?
So, I'm trying to group everything together. Ms. Justice and Mr. Wildebohr and Mr. Merrick, I think you guys made very good points. One is, the devil's always going to be in the details in something like this. The second thing is, the goal to not make this a divisive thing amongst the staff is critical as well. I think the point that Ms. Justice and Mr. Wildebohr made, the buckets of money are as big as they are. If we want to put forth an initiative like that, it only comes when we deepen our bucket. What I don't want to do is rob Peter to pay Paul and have us do one thing instead of another, or we want to pay everybody 10% more so we lose 10% of our people, which isn't necessarily a safe thing to do either. But I think you guys have all referenced those things specifically in that. But this would be an initiative added on, not in place of what we're already doing. So those are good points that I wanted to highlight.
And then I'm going to have this, we're coming close on time. I'm going to let Ms. Bradford speak because she hasn't had the opportunity.
And I'm glad I followed him because I agree with what he just said and with what Ms. Barnhart said and what Ms. Justice said. On the face of it, I love this idea. Timing could not be worse, to be honest. Staff is maxed out, we're maxed out, the budget's maxed out. And I'm not being mean, but there are some board members who don't come to all of our meetings now. How can we add another committee? We put 10 staff members in every meeting, and they have jobs. When you do that calendar, it's going to be real telling. But I think it's a great idea, and I want to get everybody as much money as we can. But we know how stressed the county is right now. We know where we are in this delicate balance with the budget. I just think the timing is not good to try and bring on something else, especially without running past the county, to bring on something else that would dip into the local funds. There's only so much of it to go around. So I think the timing is off.
Okay. And that is the time that we have allotted for.
May I make a motion to extend for 1 minute so I can just make one final comment?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think we're going to have one more, I'd like to have a comment too then.
So then,
We need more than 1 minute.
more than 1 minute.
It's like 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
5 minutes. So you'd like to,
Make a motion to extend for 5 minutes.
okay, and second. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Mr. Perry.
Yeah, I have talked to some of our commissioners, specifically Mr. Dan Scalise and all of them, well, not all of them, but at least 3 or 4 of them. And they're all, in general, in theory, they like this idea. But they're not going to commit to any funds based off a 4-page proposal. You know, I mean, we need to have a comprehensive plan before they're going to, agree to it. So if we don't do this, we're never going to get it, and this is just going to take time. Again, we're probably not, this is probably going to take a year's worth of work for our committee meeting to get a master plan together, if not longer. So the sooner we get started, yeah, this is not for this budget year, maybe not even for the next one, but we got to get going at some point, otherwise it's never going to happen.
Mr. Wildebohr?
And I don't know if you're on the spot, so I'll look at you if you'd like to.
But you want me to put her on the spot?
Did you put her on the spot, please? But it's, as far as I remember, there's not a clear-cut, comparison of union and their performance to a assistant principal to, we don't have nothing like that right now. Say, basically, to be able to compare and contrast folks right now, is there?
Well, I think it's a many-headed beast, obviously. What I think I would like to start with is asking Ms. Geller to track down the salary study that was done a couple of years ago and get copies of that for everyone on the board that may impact on our thinking. Can I say another thing quickly? I forgot. Thank you. I also want to remind everybody that supporting our staff is not only a financial burden, it's also the way we interact with them, the way we make policy, the way we treat them, the way we interact and listen to their feedback. And I think for a lot of people, if we can't impact on how much they make, we can impact on how they feel about their job. Now I'm done. Thank you.
You're good. All right. Moving on to, oh, has it, he went, has it been the 5 minutes?
I took over, didn't I? My bad.
Got 1 minute.
We got 1 minute.
While you're already.
1 minute. Dr. Merrick, close us out, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll make it real quick. I can't remember what the discussion was. When I'm hearing Mr. Perry's ideas, the first thing that comes to my mind is, why does it have to come from the county or the endowment or our budget? Why can't this come from the business community? This is the Pepsi award, this is, and I remember someone saying something that we couldn't do that, like there was some legal concern about that. But could we, as a board committee, talk to the public and try to collect funds to fund this thing, right, from the business community?
If we could ask the attorneys to speak on that.
Well, I'm looking at them.
I have the law pulled up now.
Oh, good.
That pertains to, I think there's a lot of latitude if you have that money. There's, let me read this, it's 115C-302.1, talks about salary of the teachers, and I looked down and I think it was, let me find it again.
Sorry, I was quick. I didn't say he'd be quick.
Yeah, it covers, I think there's latitude. If you were able to find that money, the local board would have the election of how to spend it. And that's the law, it's in there.
I just want to put that in there, so it doesn't necessarily have to come from us. That's all. I'm done.
All right.
Point.
We have hit our time. What's your point of inquiry, sir?
At this point, it's just discussion. Is the plan for this to have a vote at some future point?
Well, today is the deadline for agenda items, so I can, believe so. It's what I have on my calendar
It is today, yes.
today.
I'd like to make a motion that we add this to the agenda for our next regular meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Second paragraph.
All right, all those in favor of adding this to the next agenda, which would be the regular meeting, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that passes. Did you vote? Okay, so that passes 5-2. So we will put this on no, it can go right to the April meeting. All right, the next item I wanted to add, we've had a lot of conversations about all of the obligations that we have as board members, and we have a lot. We have some amazing opportunities to be able to go into schools. We have amazing events that we can go to. We also have the duties as board members that we are obliged to do as well. So what I wanted to do is kind of give us a visual. The teacher and me wanted to give a visual of when, if we were looking at a month, when every single committee meets. Are you writing?
No, I'm finding someone who writes neatlier than me to do that.
Oh, look at you. No, I'm sorry, not for nothing.
Julie did this for me on
Look,
Monday.
Julie stood up. She's like, I got
100
this.
times better than
Julie
I
knows.
do. But that way you can focus on the conversation.
I appreciate that, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Directly on there. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna list the committee, and you tell when that meeting meets and the duration of it, just kind of so we can have an idea of that. You don't have to write the duration, but you can put just when it is. So we're going to start, I went on and grabbed the list of all of the committees, all 19 of them. 19 committees, that's a lot. So finance, Ms. Bradford.
We're generally around the 27th, and we meet for an hour and a half.
So the
12:30
27th,
to
finance,
2.
if you could just write finance on the 27th. All right. You don't have to, I mean, go ahead, do 1.5. Go ahead, Ms. Farnham, you do 1.5. Oh, look at that, it's up there too.
Hey, leave room for multiple.
But there's some on, that are not on there. There are some that are not on there that All right, moving on, legislative. We just had that.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yep. Leave space for the turnaround task force, that was before that one.
Yep, but we'll get there, hang on.
Sorry.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Listen, quit jumping ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Always one of them in class.
Go get some fun.
all right, policy.
First
Mr. Wilbur?
Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month, and yes, we got it done in 2 hours and 10 minutes last time.
Yeah,
Yes.
we were
Good job.
That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Go
So,
speed racer, go speed racer.
Hey, Josie said it at like an hour and 15 one time, right?
Yeah, well,
I've
not
done
with
it in
28 policies.
35.
That's right, we did.
I've done it in
35.
35.
keep going.
Okay, moving on. So we have, the next one is safety, and that's broken out, down into 3 separate categories, which I don't know how consistently everybody's been meeting, or if anybody's been meeting. And so I'm gonna kind of put a pin in that one, unless you, have you met?
Health one? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's bi-monthly, but I guess I'll be meeting again on the 5th.
This is just like to
The day
pretend,
after.
if we were to have every single one of our committee meetings in 1 month, what would it look like?
Okay, all right, so that would be the day after our meeting, which would be Wednesday.
Are you talking about track?
No, nope.
Which one are you talking about?
This is safety, mental health.
Mental health.
So there's 3 parts of the safety
And it's
committee.
2 hours,
3 different safety committees.
Yes.
Okay, safety, 2 hours, mental health, 2 hours.
2 hours.
Where do you want it?
Just put it on Wednesday.
Any Wednesday, a
Like,
Wednesday.
Right next day, you know, we are after the meeting.
Then we have the, oh my gosh. So we have mental health, we have the building and grounds, which we haven't met yet, but do you recall when we met the last time?
I think I have the list of who's on.
It was like quarterly.
Oh, I know who's
So
on them.
It was, last time it was a Zoom call for about an hour and a half.
And it was, let's say, on a Thursday for 1.5. Sure. Safety, building, it would be building.
Building.
Safety, grounds.
Which one of those am I on? Because we haven't met.
You're on the 3rd one. So we have building,
Who's on the 3rd one with me?
that's discipline.
Oh.
The one sitting next to you.
We haven't met.
So when you met before with Mr. McManus, how often and, well, not how often, when, how long did it take you to meet?
About an hour.
Okay, so we'll put a,
Another safety for one.
That's,
Yeah, we had a lot of homework.
Another
Mhm.
Discipline, cell phone.
Friday the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're just covering being there. You really just scratch what we
Okay.
can do.
Title IX,
4th Monday,
4th Monday, and it is how long?
1 hour,
Okay,
actually 1.5, sorry.
ACES, I was part of that for a hot minute, and that is,
Third Thursday. No, sorry, second.
Ms. Varnum knows.
It's the second.
And that's typically for
1 hour.
1 hour. Calendar committee, we haven't met yet, and I don't know.
No, we adopted a 2-year calendar,
That
so.
would be-
Right, so when you had calendar committee, when did it meet?
I have never met with the calendar committee, because when they did the calendar
That
committee
was
last time,
before, that
they did
was-
a 2-year stint, so that we'd be completely Xed out.
There were 2 meetings that were 2 hours apiece, and they happened probably on Wednesdays.
So Wednesday,
I disagree, I thought it was Mondays. but
Okay, we can.
I wasn't on
Monday.
that committee, so.
Yeah.
okay, Monday, 2 hours, calendar. CTE,
That is a quarterly.
but when it
and
happens.
Wednesday, in the middle of the day, at 11:30 or 12:30, if I remember.
For how long?
About 2 hours, maybe an hour. I'm looking at my counterpart, that hasn't come to
Well,
me
2 hours.
yet, CTE Thursday.
2 is
Two's
fine. Curriculum,
Oh.
it is, but
It
we haven't
would-
met yet.
It's a couple hours quarterly. And I would propose a change to the curriculum committee to make it different.
Well, we can talk about that in a
I'm just
minute.
saying.
But yeah, so put it on a Tuesday for 2 hours.
Yeah, it was in the 4 o'clock range, so everybody could come.
Educator of the Year.
Oh, my gosh.
Lots of time.
Oh, my gosh.
We've had one one meeting so far, but then we'll have several other meetings, then we'll have interviews.
Binder to read.
Okay,
Good
so
interviews.
how long is Educator of the Year meeting? And
Well, it matters, like, the initial meeting was like an hour and a half, but then we had.
Let's
like,
say an
so
hour and a
When
half.
we do the interviews, that's 2 days in a row.
It's 2
all
solid
day.
days.
Yeah, 2 solid full days.
It's unbelievable.
But,
I'd say
you know, that's
solid
only
2 hours.
2
Let's
times.
put it 2 hours.
Out of the year.
we'll do 3, and we'll do it.
Do it on a Friday.
On a
Yeah,
Friday. Friday the 14th, Pi Day.
Friday, we'll do it on Friday.
Heyo.
In theory, this looked different to me, but it's working out okay, I guess. Gifted advisory is,
Mondays at 6 for an hour.
look at you. I just got the email. I have Head Start on here, but I know we're not really doing that, so I'm gonna kind of put a pin in that one. SHAC.
Jeff, you didn't already do?
Nope, nope, SHAC and mental health, the safety committee is different. Those are 2 different things.
That's the health advisory.
Yes. So
Okay.
you were thinking of SHAC when you said that?
I think so.
Okay.
2 hours? I don't, now I'm confused.
Okay.
It's not fair. With the safety, okay.
So you, so that was initially supposed to be that one.
Okay,
SHAC is the first Wednesday, right,
yes.
of the month?
Very good, yeah, first Wednesday of the month.
Yes.
See, I'm confused, we're getting further on from it.
There's so many. Sustainability, I'm working on getting that together, so we have not established a specific date as of yet, but we can say Friday for the moment, and we'll say 1.5, sure.
Don't forget student scholarship for future teachers.
That's very important.
That one is, yeah, good call. But that's everybody.
Still have to meet.
True. Turnaround task force.
All right, task force is now an hour and a half on a Wednesday, the Wednesday of the second week.
Yep. Parks and
Throw
Garden?
lunch away.
Parks and
That
Garden.
is Tuesday morning for an hour, the first Tuesday of the month, right before, yeah, same day as before you.
Okay. Soil and water.
That is a whopping 3-hour meeting on the first Wednesday of the month. Sometimes we run over.
The first Wednesday?
Yes.
For 1 hour?
No.
3 hours.
Three.
Three. Listen.
There's a lot to talk about.
I enjoy it a lot. It is very entertaining.
It was
I love the
fun.
guys over there. Shout out to Matt and Evan and Frank, and also Drew. She'll be upset about it.
Or Legion Stadium.
That's great.
All right.
It's great.
And
Did you
then,
do Legion Stadium?
not yet.
Soil and water? Parks and
I just
We
did
just
that
got
one.
soil water.
Just did that one. Legion is the next one.
Legion is quarterly, I think, and it's usually about 2 hours.
2 hours
Thursday.
on a Thursday.
Improve conservation in our area and advocate for change.
And then the last one was the future teacher scholarships, and that's the whole board. We haven't done that yet, but that is typically a full day, if I remember correctly.
You got CTE?
Yes.
Did you already mention the bond?
Oh, I didn't have capital and bond on there. Oh, we have more than 20 then.
Oh,
Capital
wait,
and
there's
bond.
more.
Let's do.
So I didn't put future teachers yet.
Okay, future teachers, go with the 18th. And just stay all day. And then,
Not even the board meeting's not even up there.
right, you're right.
And the agenda review.
Yes, correct.
And-
And
and
budget
budget
meeting.
for
There's,
one.
okay,
Capital
so,
for one.
capital.
Capital One.
I rest my case.
I think it is. I
25.
think it is.
25.
Thank you.
Bond, we haven't met yet. Who's been on bond before?
No one.
James Bond?
I attend them.
Bond.
I've never
Listen,
We
sir.
have not ever met before. in my time.
I've never heard of it before either.
Yeah.
So bond has not met yet.
I mean, I was on it for 4
Okay.
years now.
Bond is initiated when we have a one.
All right.
Must have been there then when I was there. I remember it.
Yeah.
No, because I don't know
You and I were on
when
it.
or how long and,
You never
okay,
met.
so if we're looking, that's just our committee obligations right there. In 1 month, if every committee met in 1 month, That's our obligations.
And 10 staff members at each meeting for some of them.
So not just our obligations, good call, not just our obligations, our staff and our superintendent's obligations.
When are they supposed to do their jobs?
And
Right.
the planning that goes into prepping for the
Yes.
meetings as
Correct.
well.
Yes.
In addition to, do you have a black one that you could do like?
Do you want another chart paper?
Hold a pen.
that you can?
Well, just to add to the regular meeting and the agenda review and a budget meeting.
workshops?
And
Town hall?
there's a town hall, right.
Remember visiting
Board retreats?
So, okay, so the whole point of all of this is to really just show us how much we're doing. About a month ago, I was invited by NCSBA to participate in a Zoom call with chairs across the state. And the question actually came up, how many committees do you have? There weren't like a ton of people that answered, but the ones that did answer said, we don't have any committees. Yeah. We have 4 committees. Finance, policy, safety, I believe, and something related to academics. That was it. They had either none or 4. We have over 20. So my goal today is to try to see if we can combine some, if we can look at what we're doing, because we do need to be out in the schools. We all want to be out in the schools. This doesn't include, like we've said, our regular meeting, our agenda review, our budget meetings, our visits to schools, the events that happen during the day and in the evenings and afternoons. And so all of that is a lot. And we want to make sure that we're in the places that we need to be as well, so that we're having the conversations with our principals, we're having the conversations with our teachers, we're places that we are actually in the district, and give our superintendent and our staff the opportunity to be able to do the same, because they need to do that too. Part of the climate survey that results that happened last year were that the staff was not visible. We were not visible in the schools. And I think it's absolutely imperative that we make that more of a priority than every single committee, which they all, let me just be clear, they all have value, but the question is there a way for us to reduce, combine, size down? Because over 20 committees is excessive. Now, some of them we can't, obviously, because some of them are with outside agencies or outside parties. And so those we need to leave alone. But when it comes to the ones that we are responsible for, I think that we really need to take a look at what do we need to keep, what do we need to kind of combine, what do we need to reduce or eliminate altogether. And so that's kind of how I wanted to start the conversation, is to have that visual and say, okay, now what do we do? I saw Ms. Bradford, you had your hand up.
Well, I've been doodling around with this for a while, and so I'm going to make a motion to combine, and I would be welcoming to somebody if I wanted to amend it to make it for a period of time to see how it works. I'd like to try things. So, but to, for 12 to 16 months, let's combine the finance, bond, and capital into one committee meeting. Looking at the committees and the write-ups, they all need to be rewritten because they're last year's. But it says the minimum of 2 board members, so that we take on the board members from capital and bond. So we'd have to tweak that language a little bit, but that is my motion, so that that meeting that's meeting would have all the elements of what we need to accomplish together. So I don't have to call you and say, hey, here's what we did, what do you think about this? So that would be, as the chair of that finance committee, and Ashley and I've talked about it, Barnes and I've talked about it, we just think it's a good idea to do the combination.
And do we have a second to that motion? Awesome. And to kind of speak to that, I've attended the finance and I've attended the capital outlay, and obviously we haven't had a bond, but there's been repetition between those, which means that there's repetition for Dr. Barnes to do, there's repetition for Ms. Sutton to do, and if we have it in one particular meeting and not over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5, that might help. So there's a motion to combine those 3 discussions.
I have it's a two-part comment. One is that we do need to start working on the bond. That's something that we have to do right away. And the finance committee is pretty busy already, for instance, meeting with the county commissioners, which is something new that we've taken on, which I think is fantastic. The question is, can we get it all done, or does that committee need to meet for longer and more often? Because I question whether or not we can get it all done. I hope that we can. The other part of my comment is, I wonder how many of our committees are actually in a sense, in competition with the district. I think that this board may have gotten overzealous with the amount of work it did because of a lack of communication or trust at the district level. And so, things have changed, I'm glad to say. And, maybe do we need to be doing all the things that the board does, and can we cede some of this back to the district?
Okay. Ms. Justice?
I'm glad Mr. Merritt brought this up, because when I started in 2018, these committees weren't there, or half of them, I would say. And it's just sort of people, I can remember a couple of people wanting, like the safety committees. And I'm just using that as an example. I didn't even know we had the bond committee. A lot of what was going on now with the finance, they had it all under one committee that all the members attended, and it was a very different environment. Of course, this was pre-pandemic, and a lot of the craziness was going on, so it was a lot less stressful, or whatever you want to call this, that's developed over the last couple of years with our finances. But yeah, a lot of these committees have been added in the last 6 or 7 years, and it's probably for exactly the reasons you said, because there wasn't a good communication and there wasn't a lot of trust. So board members were creating things, or people in the community were creating things and asking us to come in order for them to feel like that we were knowing what was happening, as opposed to having it go through leadership within the school district itself on the professional level.
Ms. Bernhardt?
I agree with my colleagues of just understanding that there is a defining role. We're in the governance role, and you guys are the ones, our staff are the ones doing the work. And so I do appreciate being informed of the work, because as we are advocating, both at the county level, I know a few of us were just in a meeting with some commissioners and sharing just where we're coming from and how we're going to do it and the ROI that we're going to see on it. So I think there's value add for us to be included in some of these, but I like the suggestion. There is a lot of overlap, and I don't say that in a bad way, but I think when you have the same group of people really knowledgeable about something, they're going to be able to help inform a good decision for the recommendation of the full board to consider. So I do like the marriage of those three committees of finance, capital, and bond, because there's going to be a lot of overlap, and the feedback when you are talking about projects or talking about different areas of investment that we're currently doing. Having a core group of people to take that ownership and understand helps explain as we have questions. Right? I can come to Ms. Bradford, I can come to Ms. Mason, I can come talk about different areas with different people. So I like that.
Mr. Perry?
I like the idea as well. I just wanted to get some clarification. Is the proposal here that, how many, you said there are 2 people on these committees now, would you open it up to like 5 or all of the entire board? What are your thoughts?
Did you want to provide any clarity for that?
Say again, Joseph?
Okay. What did you want to say?
I would think it would go to policy, and policy would kind of mull over a redefinition.
And if I could, I was actually going to speak to something like that. If, just to make sure, I want to check with the attorneys. If we have a committee of more than 3 members, that constitutes a quorum, correct? And that means that they can take action without the presence of the entire board. Is that true?
I looked at the question earlier this week of what the district body is in the open meetings law, and the district body, and this is, I know this is not an interpretation that a lot of town attorneys would give you, but it includes, just defined to include a committee, and this is the school governance view, but a committee create it like that by board. So if you had a majority of the elected board here, yeah, I think they could take action. They would have a quorum. Now, here's one of the funny things about it. You could have a situation where you could have a majority of the elected board, and let's use, is it Finance Committee that has the staff members on it?
Yes.
Okay. Finance Committee's got staff members on it, right? Let's say there are 4 board members, elected board members, and then 6 staffers on it. You could have all 4 of elected staff show up and not have the 6 staffers, and you wouldn't have a quorum, because you don't have a majority of defined by the statute, I mean, you don't have a quorum of that committee, but at the same time, theoretically, you could have a quorum of
The board.
the board.
Yeah.
So, it's probably,
I think to be.
that creates a mess.
Correct, because this is an advisory board, or not advisory board, an advisory committee, I would hesitate to put more than 3 people on that. That's just my thought process. One, to maintain that transparency and honesty. We have a community that we want to trust us, and so if there are 4 of us there and we take action, that's not hearing all the voices, and so I think I would be hesitant to put more than 3 people on there.
And
Mr.
you-
Wilk? Sorry.
I would concur. I think you're limited to 3 for sure. As you say, it makes it very clear that this is an advisory board. The other thing I was going to say was that, as Dr. Merritt, or my colleague way over there has mentioned, I think that, the Finance Committee, the Bond Committee is obviously going to be important, clear, 100%. But I think the Finance Committee has already got the establishment of a lot of the business people from the community here. So, what a great, instead of reinventing the wheel and saying, okay, let's start from scratch and with the Bond Committee and trying to get, some of these business people around the table, we have that. So why not, and I agree, again, with my colleague over there, because he's on point with this also, that right now the Finance Committee is very busy, absolutely. Once the budget is passed, the Finance Committee becomes a lot less, so what a great time to just go ahead and gear up towards the bond. That, to me, that it just makes a lot of sense. That's why I second it.
Ms. Bradford?
I would point out, in 1 month and 1 day, we will have a budget.
Go, Dr.
No
Barr.
stress, Dr. Barr.
Give him some
No
blood
stress,
pressure
Ashley.
medication. Well,
But,
I have extra bottles.
you know,
I need blood pressure medicine, I've got Ashley.
She's the one that needs it.
No, I can't speak for her.
I hadn't really thought it through, so I turned to my list and I started thinking, and we don't want to outnumber any one group of the other, and we worked really hard to get a synergetic kind of group. Yeah. And, as a couple of us were in with the county commission yesterday, one county commissioner in particular is seeing the praise of what the interaction that he's having with us. So that part's really good. And I wouldn't want to outnumber them and make them feel overwhelmed. And we're still short 1 county commissioner at this point, and maybe one would come back. So the committee's a manageable size, and we worked really hard on that, and we have non-voting members on that, and we have voting members. So yeah, I would go with the 3 thing and leave that up to you to figure that out.
My other question, I guess, would be, you said temporary, what kind of time frame were you thinking?
12 months to 16 months. Again, I'm going to try it and see if you like it. If it doesn't work, then no
Pick a
harm, no
number.
foul.
12 or 16?
Oh, okay, this is April 16.
Okay. All right, so that, I think, provided some clarity. So the motion on the table is to combine finance, bond, and capital for a term of 16 months with 3 members of the board. This will need to go to policy.
Oh, good. I have, just as I wanted to.
This will need to go to policy because it will need to be adjusted. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Woohoo! We just downsized by 2 committees, guys. We just downsized. All right, and I want to keep this discussion flowing. Are there any other committees or adjustments that people have ideas for to make to various committees?
May we just go through the list?
Surely, we surely can. So we did finance and capital and
Can I
bond.
make a motion?
If anybody has a computer,
I'll-
look at that
I'll
list,
go-
they all have to be updated.
All right, so moving on to legislative. Are there any, well, we're just going to go through and then I can,
I was going to make a motion if we could get a 5-minute break.
I'll second that.
Oh, yeah, there's
oh,
actually,
yeah, we can take a 5-minute break, yes. All right, come back in 5 minutes. That would be 2:29.
Okay, well,
you can stay in here.
I'm about to just send you agenda item because the DPI letter is on there.
Are you gonna make a motion?
in session here. So we wanted to continue talking about, the next one is legislative. We do not have an enormous amount of time. We do have a closed session, but I do want to give this about 15 more minutes. And if we need further discussion, I feel like we can add that at possibly the agenda review if we don't have too much going on. So as far as legislative, are there any changes or thoughts that we have with legislative committee?
Ms. Mc-
Yes, Ms. Barnhart.
You know, when I was given the chairmanship position for the legislative committee when it first got on, I was brand new to it. And so one of the, I think, most valuable things that has come from the committee has been the development of the legislative agenda. That was, we first adopted ours a few months ago by the whole board. And I think that that has helped given us a common message whenever we go and talk about advocacy. There's lots of really great ideas that can be done with legislative. One of the ideas, though, that came to committee just this past week was to host a networking event, and Dr. Barnes informed us he had already arranged that. So, you know, as far as the work of the committee, I think having a common message that we're bringing the staff together to make sure that we're on the same page as far as what advocacy looks like. But I think the biggest thing coming out of legislative that has been fruitful has been the legislative agenda. So there's lots of different ideas coming from the committee. I mean, we had a discussion this last week of whether or not we want to expand the committee and include members of the community. That was not a voted on issue. That was just a discussion topic point of, do we want to be in charge of hosting events kind of thing. So there was a lot of just conversations as to the direction of it, but I'm willing to hear from board members, but I feel like there's a lot that we could come from this, or we could either limit the scope of it to say, do we want a sole purpose and then it be brought before the whole board of any legislative topics to consider, because all of us are liaisons to elected officials. It is not one person's job to do it. It's all of our jobs to do it. We are all elected to do the job and the work of advocacy. And so that's where my thought is right now.
Dr. Merrick.
Pertaining to advocacy specifically, yes, I do think that is part of the board's responsibility to have a vision. But building on what I was saying earlier, a lot of the work that's being done in our committees is a little bit of overreach, actually. That our job is oversight. Our job is governance and policy, and that we have a lot of policies because of that lack of trust and that lack of communication. And in contextualizing all of this is, do we start to have our committees really just being oversight? And do we even need a committee for oversight if we can get reports to our board meetings, which is something that Mr. Perry had recommended around Title IX. You know, a lot of our committees, that might be the actual job, just to check in with the district. Hey, how you guys doing? Is there anything that you're missing that we need to remind you of, right? To be in keeping with our vision. So we're really at a inflection point here where, what is our role as a board? And I think that as we look at downscaling these committees, checking in with the district and finding out where we are, maybe even getting in the way.
Well, with that, can I offer a suggestion?
Can Mr. Wildebohr speak?
You are in charge, ma'am.
Mr. Wildebohr.
My wife can let me speak once in a while.
I let you speak.
I would agree with the legislative committee. I think that it is a needed committee. I think we need to, and I understand what my colleague is saying over there. First off, I want to stress that I think that we've mentioned several times that we don't trust the administration, and that's not our circumstance, in my opinion. So I think that needs to be very clearly clarified that currently we do have a lot of faith in our central office. But again, I think that this is one that reaching out, I think exactly the dollars, but I know it was in the millions of dollars that were brought back last year by members of the Legislative Committee and others to help and support our students. So going to, but I totally agree that there's seven of us need to do that and continue to do that and go talk to folks and share and the great things that are going on in New Hanover County schools, but also the needs that we continue to have. But I do think that there is a lot of value. I voted for the Legislative Committee originally when it came out, and I think it has been very fruitful for our students and our staff.
Ms. Justice.
I just want to re-emphasize what both Ms. Barnhart and Mr. Wildebohr has said. There's 7 of us here, and all of us should be advocating with every elected official that has any bearing on our work that we do. Not, legislative, county commissioners, oh my gosh, you can even talk to the city council members, because in many ways, some things that we do have, we can work together on. So although the legislative committee is powerful, if you use it in a certain way, each one of us is powerful. I know from when I came in 2018, certain people were not literally allowed to talk about the legislature just because of the party they were on. And that was sad, because our public schools are in dire straits right now, and they were in dire straits in 2018. And we need to recognize that, all 7 of us, and always put first what we're here for, which is to support our public schools and advocate for them. So the committee does that, but individually, we need to be doing that constantly.
Mr. Perry?
I can definitely see the need for the legislative committee when it comes to funding and appropriations. We certainly need the money. And there are probably also some, some interactions like Ms. Barnhart has had recently with the Attorney General, and I think, I'm not sure if you're still in the middle of crafting that DPI letter, but there are certainly some things there. But also, though, I am fearful to some extent of asking for too much legislation from the state when it comes to other things. I mean, I want us to remain autonomous as our school district. I don't want a General Assembly or a legislature trying to micromanage our school districts. We are the elected representatives of our community. We're going to hear from our teachers and our students and our parents. And sometimes I really feel the General Assembly is trying to micromanage us, especially with some recent legislation that they did, one revolving around multiple absences and still getting passing grades, which just seems bewildering to me, Mr. Wildebohr.
Let's keep it on.
But I think if we could limit it to, the financial component, I think that might be, as far as us getting funding, I think those relationships are healthy, because we do need that.
Ms. Barnhart?
After feedback from my colleagues, Ms. Mason, I would like to offer an amendment to this committee, and so direct policy to reflect this, that the legislative committee would meet once a year, compiling our staff's need to create a legislative agenda that is approved before the whole board.
Second. All right. Any further discussion? Dr. Merrick?
I would like to amend that further to go along with what my colleague has said and have it be about financial stuff and not anything that's political in nature.
Is there a second for that amendment?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment, Mr. Wildebohr?
We can actually discuss the original. Cede my time. Hold on, that's going to make a mess.
Mr. Perry?
In regards to the amendment, I'm not really sure what you meant by all the political stuff. What I mean is that I am for our state creating general guidelines and guideposts. What I don't want is, I want them to be able to give us the flexibility to run our school district. and as us 7 elected members see fit. So, so I don't know what you, and sometimes that's gonna, might be political. So I would probably like to offer an amendment to the amendment to just.
No, you can't.
You can't make an amendment to the
No,
amendment?
you cannot amend the amendment.
Yeah, so I would probably, as currently phrased, I would be against it.
Ms. Bradford? Okay. This is to add a stipulation that the legislative only focuses on financial component.
Goal, financial.
Financial.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Ms. Keeley, will you call the roll?
Ms. Mason? Ms. Barnhart? Ms. Bradford?
No.
Ms. Justice?
I'm still not quite sure what's going on. Oh,
Only focusing on finance, financial advocacy.
I say yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Merrick?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
And Mr. Wildebohr?
No.
Okay, that amendment fails 5-2. Going back to the original,
I'd like to offer another
motion.
amendment.
Oh my lord, Mr. Wildebohr,
Substitute
go ahead.
amendment. I would just ask my colleague whether she would say, she said once a month, or once a year. I would like to see it, something may come up, so at least twice a year.
Okay,
Second.
yeah.
Okay, any discussion on that amendment? Ms. Justice?
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea because you're exactly right.
Okay. Any further?
My only point of clarity, so still with the scope of the goal to being creating the legislative agenda for the district.
The amendment is
But it's not.
twice rather than.
Okay. All right.
So the amendment is to make it twice. So I'm gonna call this one. All those in favor of meeting, the legislative committee meeting only twice a year signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Moving back to the original motion, which is to have a legislative, the focus to be on the legislative agenda.
Coordinating with staff to compile and create the legislative agenda for the district. That would be
Okay.
the focus, and that would need to be updated in policy as well.
Okay. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Looking at time, we do have a closed session, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for that closed session. So I am going to
Postpone this discussion. to the
postpone this discussion until the agenda
agenda. I'll
review.
second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Let me get my whole script out. I cannot, gotta have the whole spiel. Okay, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11C for the following purposes: to prevent the disclosure of information as privileged or confidential pursuant to General Statute 115C-402 and not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, to prevent the disclosure of student records rendered confidential under the Family Education Rights, to consult with an attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the board, and to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual employed or considered for employment with the school system, or to hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against any individual employee.
I'll second it.
He did. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are in closed session. And open, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0. We are adjourned.
We do this again next week.